It's night. A little girl named Megan is standing at her bedroom window, and on the other side of the glass, smiling at her, is an old grandmother.
Except, Grandma is supposed to be somewhere else.
Grandma is very far from where she's supposed to be, but she's smiling, and she's warm, and she asks Megan very gently to open the window, to let her in. So Megan does.
And that is the last good decision anyone in that house ever makes.
This is the very first thing the show From shows you. Before you understand the town, before you meet a single hero, it teaches you one rule, and it teaches it to you in blood. The things that come at night cannot get in, unless you invite them. And here's the part that should put a cold hand on the back of your neck. That rule is not
Made up. It is one of the oldest, most stubborn laws in European folklore. People in the Balkans were bolting that exact door 400 years ago, and they were not being superstitious.
They thought they were being practical. Welcome to the myth beneath. Over the next 4 episodes, we're going to walk through every season of From, every creature, every talisman, every impossible tree, and we're going to show you the ancient folklore that dreamed it first. Tonight, Season 1. The rules, the trap, and the door you must never, ever open. Quick promise before we go in, because it matters. The people who made From have never said a word about Slavic mythology. When they talk about their inspirations, they talk about September 11th and the feeling that the solid world can vanish underneath you. They talk about Lost. They talk about a Francis Bacon painting of a screaming pope. Not one of them has ever mentioned a vampire, or a forest spirit, or a Serbian folklorist. Which is exactly why
This is interesting. We are not claiming anyone copied anything. We're claiming something stranger. We're claiming that when you build a story out of pure human dread, when you ask, what is the oldest fear, you keep digging up the same bones. And the people who buried those bones first wrote it all down, some of them under oath.
So here are our rules, the same as always. When something is real, documented folklore, Zubayd's going to tell you who recorded it and when. When it's a theory, ours or the fandom's, we'll say so out loud. And then we're going to follow that theory all the way down. Deal? Deal. Open the window. Let's start. With the rule
Itself because it runs the whole show. In From, you survive the night by getting inside a building that has a talisman over the door. The creatures cannot cross that threshold. So far, so simple. It's a haunted house rule. But the show adds a twist that turns it from a haunted house rule into something much older. The talisman keeps them out. You can let them in. And once you do, once you invite one across that threshold, it doesn't smash through the door like a zombie. It walks in wearing someone kind and smiling. And then it kills you while it's still smiling.
which is the precise nightmare the show keeps returning to. The monster isn't the thing in the dark. The monster is the familiar face that should be safe.
Now, anybody who's seen a vampire movie is already nodding, because a vampire can't enter unless you invite it is one of the most famous rules in horror. But people think that's a movie invention. It isn't. It's folklore, and the Balkan version of it is far creepier than anything Hollywood did with it.
Give me the real one.
All right, travel to Greece and the southern Balkans, into the belief in the vrykolakas, and that word, by the way, is borrowed straight from the South Slavic Vukanović. The vrykolakas is a revenant, the restless, walking dead. And in the documented village custom, it doesn't break down your door, it comes at night, it knocks, and it calls your name. And the rule people actually lived by, was this: never answer the first knock, because the dead can only knock once. If you answer, you die within days, and then you get up and you start knocking on someone else's door.
Wait, so the survival rule wasn't lock the door. The survival rule was don't respond when it calls you.
Don't respond when it calls you. Sound familiar? Because that is the entire logic of Fromm's creatures. They don't force their way in. They ask. They use your name, your grief, your hope. The show even tells you these things will say anything.
Be anyone to get that one word out of you. Yes, come in. Okay, but why the threshold? Why is a doorway magic in the first place? In the show and in the folklore, why does the line at the bottom of the door mean anything? Because to the people who believed this, a threshold wasn't carpentry, it was a border between worlds. The folklorist Svetlana Tolstaya, she's at the Institute of Slavic Studies in Moscow, and she
Published a big survey of exactly this in 2024, lays out how the Slavic house was a tiny, ordered cosmos, and the doorway, the window, the chimney were the weak points where the other world could leak in. You didn't sweep dirt out over the threshold, you didn't shake hands across it. Some places the dead were even buried under it so they'd guard the family. The door was the most dangerous inch of the entire house. So when Megan opens that window, she's not just unlocking a latch. She's opening a wound in the wall between the living and the dead. And here's where I'll throw the first theory on the fire. If From is secretly running on revenant rules, vampire rules, then it's quietly telling you what the creatures are. Not demons, not aliens, not monsters from some other dimension. The returning dead. People who came back wrong. Hold that
that thought because the show takes 3 full seasons to confirm what the folklore is whispering in episode 1. Let's talk about the talismans. These are the heart of the survival system in From. Stone desks with strange carved symbols hung beside every door. The townspeople don't know what the symbols mean. They just know that without them, you're dead by morning. And I want
to be honest right at the top because that's the deal. The specific talisman in the show, that exact carved stone, is invented. You won't find it in a museum. But the logic of it, hanging a marked object at the doorway to keep the hungry dead out, that is some of the best documented folk practice in the entire Balkans. We have names, we have dates, we have field reports. So what did people actually hang on the door? Depends where you stood. Iron, an old knife, a nail, a horseshoe, driven into the doorframe because the dead can't abide iron. Hawthorn, in Serbian it's glog, and hawthorn was so tied to vampire defense that they made the stakes out of it. Garlic, of course, smeared on the frame. And my personal favorite because it tells you how these people thought, scattered seeds, poppy, flax, millet, sprinkled across the threshold and along the path to the house. Seeds? What does seeds do against the walking dead? This is the beautiful part. The dead are compulsive. They cannot pass a pile of seeds without stopping to count every single one. And it can only count 1 seed per night. So by the time it finishes, the sun's up and it has to crawl back into the ground. You didn't kill it, you gave it homework. You bored it to death until dawn.
that is genuinely one of the strangest things I've ever
heard. And it's real. And it's recorded. There's a folklorist named Tadimir Vukanović who did fieldwork among Serbs and Roma in Kosovo in the late 1950s and wrote it all down. The hawthorn, the iron, the knives in the grave. There's Tiamir Đorđević, whose 1953 study is still the master catalog of Serbian revenant beings. And the seed-counting trick shows up in G.F. Abbott's Macedonian folklore, published all the way back in 1903. These aren't legends somebody posted online last week. This is a century of ethnography.
Now, here's a detail from the show I've been dying to bring to you because it's perfect for this. In the town of From, the priest, Father Kotri, notices something that haunts him. There is not a single Bible anywhere in the town, not one. But there are dozens of paperback thrillers, pulpy airport novels, and he can't understand it. A whole town and no scripture. Oh, that's a gift of a detail. Because look at what the folklore says. The cross, the holy water, the priest. In the actual village practice, those were the new paint. The church showed up and painted a thin Christian coat over a defensive system that was already thousands of years old. The real ward was never the cross. The real ward was the iron, the thorn, the seed, the carved mark, the pagan thing underneath. So when From strips every Bible out of the town, it scrapes off the Christian paint and leaves the old pagan ward standing there, exposed and working. A carved stone at the threshold that has nothing to do with God and everything to do with something
Far older. I don't think the writers did that on purpose, but that is exactly what a folklorist would have done to tell you
this place predates your religion. Your cross won't help you here. And one more theory to plan before we move on. We don't know what the symbol on the talisman means yet, but Season 1 also shows us a symbol carved on the walls underground, down where the creatures sleep. Same energy, same strangeness. And I'll just leave this here quietly.
What if the thing that keeps them out and the thing that holds the whole town together are the same symbol? What if the ward and the cage are made of the same material? We'll earn that one over the next 3 episodes.
But Violet, let's go into the woods, because in Season 1, the sheriff, Boyd, decides he's done waiting. He takes a young woman named Sarah and he walks into the forest, further than anyone in that town has ever gone, to find a way out. And the forest does to them exactly what a Slavic forest is supposed to do. Walk me through what happens, because it's a lot. First, the roads. You cannot drive out of this town. Every road loops back to where you started. You aim for the highway, you end up on Main Street. The geography itself is a trap. Stop right there, because that's the Leshy. The what? The Leshy, the forest lord of Slavic folklore. He's the spirit
Of the deep woods, and his signature trick, the thing people genuinely feared, was that he would twist the paths. You'd be walking a road you'd known your whole life, and somehow you would end up exactly where you started, again and again, circling the same clearing until you went mad or died of exposure. When a person walked into the forest and simply never came home, in a land with almost no roads, that was the Leshy. He moved the path. That's the looping road in the show. It gets better. How does the Leshy lure you in the first place? He mimics. He calls out in the voice of a friend, or a crying child, or a dying man begging for help. You hear someone you love calling from the trees, and you step off the path to save them, and there's no one there. There was never anyone there.
Okay, now I have to tell you what happens to Boyd in those woods, because you're gonna lose your mind. Deep in the forest, Boyd hears a voice, a woman's voice, calling for help, and he follows it to a clearing, and there, wrapped in something like a giant web, is his dead wife, Abby. And he runs to free her, and of course, it's a trap. The Abby grabs him, and spiders pour out, and they bite him, and he loses his strength and very nearly his will to keep going.
The dead loved one, calling from the trees to lure you off the path to your death. Alex, that's not an homage. That's the Leshy, beat for beat. They independently rebuilt the single most documented behavior of the Slavic forest spirit. And the defense the old folklore gives you to the Leshy: 2 things. Turn your clothes inside out, confuse him, and whatever you do, do not answer to your name.
There it is again. Don't answer when it calls you.
It's the same key that locks every door in the story. The vrykolakas at the threshold, the Leshy in the trees. The whole defense is refusing to respond. And here's the cruelest twist the show adds. There's a moment where the voice in the forest knows something it shouldn't. It uses Boyd's old army nickname, a name only his dead wife and his son ever knew. So now it's not just mimicking a voice, it's proving it has access to the intimate dead, the secret, private dead.
Which is the rusalka, the Đorđević, all of it.
That's the family, yeah. The rusalka, the water spirits, who are often the unclean dead, luring with songs, the Đorđević. And that one's worth a second, because it's the spirit of a dead, unbaptized child, recorded by Vukanović, the father of Slavic folklore studies, in his dictionary of 1818. The Đorđević screams in the night, imitates a child's cry, draws people out of their houses, and it's terrified of light and of dogs. A screaming, dead child that lures you into the dark. Now hold that up against the children's voices the town keeps hearing.
So what is this place? If the forest is the Leshy's forest and the dead are walking and you can't ever leave, what is the town mythologically?
Here's where I have to be careful, and then I'm going to be bold. The careful part. Everyone wants to call From a purgatory, and I get why, but purgatory is a Catholic idea. It's the wrong toolbox. The accurate Slavic concept is much darker and much better, and it has a name. The ethnographer Dmitry Zelenin in 1916 defined a whole category of the dead he called the zalozhne pokojniki, the unclean dead, the ones who died wrong, too soon, by violence, by their own hand, unbaptized, and whose souls could not pass on. And the phrase the folk used about them is the one that should be the tagline of this entire show. The earth will not accept them.
The earth will not accept them.
They're not in heaven, they're not in hell. They're stuck here, on the surface, wandering, angry, dangerous, because the ground itself refused to close over the dead.
There are two more mysteries from Season 1 I need you on. The first is the strangest character in the show, the boy in white. A child in old-fashioned clothes who only certain people can see, the dreamers, the childlike, the ones the town has its hooks in. He appears in daylight and at night. He leads people to safety, and he also stands there, smiling, playing, while massacres happen around.
And I'm gonna give you an honest answer here because this is exactly the kind of thing a lesser show would let us pretend is a perfect folklore match. It isn't. The boy in white is mostly the show's own invention, and that's fine. A story is allowed to dig new tunnels.
But
his function rhymes with something ancient, a child spirit who walks between the living and the dead, who guides the chosen toward a threshold. That's the shape of a psychopomp, the guide of souls. And the fact that he's ambiguous, helper 1 minute, watching you burn the next, that's the trickster guide, the figure who leads you somewhere but never tells you whether it's salvation or a trap. The folklore can't tell you who the boy in white is, but it can tell you what kind of thing he is. And it's not a comforting kind.
and the second thing, the trees. And there are trees that aren't trees. You climb inside one, and it spits you out somewhere else entirely, across the town, into a tunnel, down a shaft. And deep in the forest, Boyd finds one of these trees hung with little glass bottles. And inside one of the bottles is a scrap of paper. And on the paper is a date. 1864. 1864. People have been trapped in this place since at least the American Civil War, maybe longer. The trap is old. And the tree is the spine of the whole world, which is the most Slavic thing in the entire show.
The world tree. In Slavic cosmology, the great tree connects the three realms, the heavens, the world of the living, and Nav, the cold underworld of the dead. The oak especially, the tree of Perun, the thunder god, sacred, planted in groves where people made offerings. And in the South Slavic villages, there were marked trees, the zapis, standing on the village border that people visited and hung things on at the turning of the year.
Hung things on, like bottles, like offerings on the branches.
A tree that pierces the worlds and lets you pass between them, standing at the boundary, hung with little offerings. They didn't invent a magic tree, they rebuilt the world tree. And the bottle with the date inside it, that's the part that turns my blood cold, because it tells you the most important thing about this story. This has happened before. People have been chosen and trapped and died here on a loop for over a century and a half. The town isn't an event, the town is a cycle.
So let's put it together, because this is the part where we tell you what the old myths think is coming.
Season 1 only gives you the rules, but the folklore those rules came from tells you what kind of story you're trapped inside, and these stories almost always end the same way. So here's our map for the rest of the series, built entirely from the oldest pattern in this kind of myth. Lay it out. In the tradition of the unclean dead and the broken right, the trapped souls are never freed by force. Nobody fights their way out. They are freed by three things, in order. First, the original sin has to be named. Somebody has to uncover the specific, terrible thing that was done at the very beginning to make this place. Second, that debt has to be paid, and in the folklore, it's almost always paid the same way. One person chooses to take the place of the others, a willing sacrifice. And third, the cycle can only be broken by someone who remembers across the repetitions. Someone who has been here before, in another life, and gets one more chance to finish what they failed to finish.
So your prediction, from folklore alone, is that the way out of From is not a door. It's a confession, a sacrifice, and a person who remembers a life they shouldn't be able to remember.
That's the prediction. And here's the deal we're making with you tonight. We are going to walk through seasons 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to hold the show up against this ancient pattern season by season, and we're going to show you how much of it the folklore got right before the writers ever showed their hand. The body and the symbol, the sacrifice, the soul that remembers. And by the final episode of this series, we'll give you our complete prediction for how Season 5, the last season, the one that finally answers everything in 2027, closes the loop.
The earth would not accept them, so they stayed. And something here has been waiting a very long time for someone to finally count the seeds. Don't answer the first knock. This has been the myth beneath. If the door at the bottom of all this got under your skin, subscribe. Part 2 goes underground, into the tunnels, into the worms, and into the children no one wants to talk about. Until then, be careful whose voice you follow home.